So let's turn to prototype 11, which is a very simple example. It's written up in Sakai, but here's just a couple of the high points here. Basically, my yard's a mess. I don't want to embarrass myself by my yard being such a mess, so I want to try to hire some help. And I don't have it written up here, but I could hire a company and I'll have to pay them $100 a week, which seems crazy, but that company will take care of everything that needs to be done in my yard on a given week. Or I have a neighborhood kid, and this neighborhood kid is willing to help me, but the downside to working with him, he's a lot cheaper. The upside, the downside is that I'm not always sure that he's going to be able to have enough time to get things done, and he might not do as good of a job as the company. So I want to try to understand how this is likely to play out if I work with my neighborhood kid. So here's the basic idea. Kid's willing to work one weekday and one weekend day every week. On a weekday, he may complete somewhere between 1 and 6 tasks. And on any weekend, he may complete somewhere between 2 and 12 tasks. And by the way, I've tried to think about, having done my yard work for several years now, how many tasks are there that really need to be done, sort of discrete tasks that I might assign to this kid or the company. I want them to mow the front yard, the side yard, and our backyard. I want them to weed the flower bed along the walkway to my house. I want them to weed the vegetable garden. I want them to plant seeds in my window boxes, etc. Discrete tasks. I think that there's going to be probably about 20. There's about 20. There's a list of about 20 that I've written up, and on any week, I think there's likely to be something around 12, on average 12 tasks that will be required. So there's variation in the number of tasks, but there's also variation in how many tasks this kid can get done on a typical weekday and a typical weekend, and that's listed here. What I've offered, what I know the kid. What I have offered and what I know the kid would be okay with is if I pay $1 for each task that's completed, and because I really want to offer an incentive for him to do the work well and get everything that I need done, I've offered to double my fee if he gets everything done that needs to be done in a given week and does it well. So with all of this uncertainty, it's hard for me to know how much I'm going to expect to pay this kid. So I could use simulation, Excel modeling first, and then simulation to try to get a better handle, better understanding of what I'm likely to be paying this kid if I were to work with him as opposed to hiring the company where I pay $100 flat fee every week. So I want you to think about what are the variables that will be used to calculate my expected costs that are known, and what are the variables that are uncertain. For those uncertain variables, how are we going to characterize them or describe the likely variation in them? Let's talk about that for a minute. But before I do, I want to just talk a little bit about random variables. I've said random variables a couple times. Let me just expand on that a little bit more. What do I mean by a random variable? Well, random variables are just things that we don't know for sure, or we might know something about. Here I say that random variables are not always completely random. The number of tasks, for example, that need to be done in my yard per week, it's not something that is completely unknown to me that's going to be, pulled out of the sky. 100, 122, 3,000. I know something about how many tasks there are likely to be in a given week. I know that it's really not going to be more than 20. And it's probably going to be around the average number. It's going to be around 12, though some weeks we're going to get a lot of rain and weeds are going to grow really fast. Might be a little bit higher. So random variables, I don't want you to think that a random variable is only something that we just don't know at all. Random variables are something that we know, it's a variable that we know something about, but we don't know exactly what the value is likely to be. So we need to characterize these random variables. We need to describe what the values for them are likely to be. So, for example, we might know something about the distribution that they come from. I'll talk more about that in a minute. The second bullet here, random variables may have a finite or an infinite set of possible values. And I want you to think about this when you describe them. If a random variable has a finite set of values, that would be the case where demand is either going to be 80, 100, or 120. 3 possible values. I don't know which one it's going to be, but it's going to be one of those. Or tomorrow's going to be rainy or sunny. It's got to be one of those. You could argue it could be something else, but in my simplified world, it's one of those two. We don't know which one, but there's a finite set of options. It's not always true that there's a finite set of options. Sometimes there's an infinite set of possible values. Well, if I were going to win the lottery, how much money could I win? Well, it's hard to say that there's a finite set of values there because, down to the penny, the lottery, the amount won could go up pretty high. That would approach, I'd say, an infinite set of possible values. Not quite, but close. It's a lot. I think of that as an infinite set of possible values. These are the sorts of things I want you to ask yourself about an input parameter to begin to characterize them. There are a lot of ways that people talk about random variables, and I just want you to be familiar with these so if you hear it, a random variable flag goes off. So 1, random variables cannot be predicted with certainty. We don't know them. We know something about them, but we don't know them for sure. They are subject to uncertainty. They can be thought of as drawn from a probability distribution that we need to choose, create, define, etc. Random variables exhibit variation over time, across context. These are all ways that we could describe random variables. So let's go back to this little gardening example. So how might we characterize uncertainty in our input parameters? So remember, I'm going to ask you to think a little bit about the expected value, alternate values this could take on. Are there finite or infinite numbers of them? What's the variation likely to be in the value, the input parameter value, and what's the shape of the distribution that will help me understand the space of possible input parameter values. So here's 3 input parameters that I would argue are random. The number of tasks completed on a weekday. Well, this kid can complete anywhere from 1 to 6 tasks. We don't know. There's a finite number of values, but we don't know which of those. Is it going to be 1, 2, 3, up to 6 on a given weekday? I don't know. Number of tasks completed on a weekend. Again, I don't really know, but the range is between 2 and 12. At a minimum, I expect that he'll get 2 done. Upper bound would be about 12. My expectation is 7. These are all important details that tell me something about the value, what the value is likely to be for each of these input parameters that are uncertain. The quality of work, or the probability that all tasks are done well and in a given day. Well, whether all the tasks that I need to get done, that's really determined by how many tasks get done. Is it sufficient? So that's kind of already taken care of. But the quality, we need another variable for that. So the quality of work, is it high quality or low quality? Do all the tasks get done well or not? I might argue that that can take on a value of either 1, high quality, or 2, not high quality. And those are the only 2 values, 1 and 2. And I might ask you to tell me, well, what's the probability of getting a 1 or a 2, high quality or not all high quality? We need to say more, though, than just what these values are.